Air dry clay is such a fantastic craft medium that can be used for many different creations and projects. Welcome to Red Rockingbird, and I am Sarah. I love to make pins and pin badges in many different ways, and I have various videos that show you how you can make your own, including this one which started its life as a log. These are clay pins, and I'm also going to do a video on how to make your own enamel pins. Cookie cutters are a really good way to cut your air dry clay, and there are many available in lots of different shapes and sizes. I designed and created these clay cutters myself, and I'll show you how later in the video. And I'm going to show you how we make these air dry clay pin badges. Lots of you ask lots of different questions about air dry clay, and that's brilliant, so please, if you do have any comments or questions, do comment below the video. This piece of clay didn't come from a fresh packet of clay, it's actually been opened a little while, so I spent a little bit longer than usual kneading the clay and making it workable once again. As always, I'm rolling my clay out on a smooth tile, rolling it out to about 6mm in thickness. I had a lady ask how to get the underside of the clay nice and smooth as well, and this is how I do it. I just turn it over and smooth out that clay and leave it to dry on my tile. I love these cutters as there's nice detail on the inside, and these leave a lovely indent. And if we want to create many of the same, we can do these really quite uniformly as we have the design there ready for us. With just a slightly damp brush, I smooth down the edges and the fibres of the paper clay. I'm so excited that I got to design and make these cutters, so let me show you how. In Adobe Illustrator, I created some outlines and saved these as SVG files. On the internet, I go to Tinkercad.com, import the SVG files into here, and then they can be manipulated and extruded to get the shape you require. It's a lot of fun and you can get some great creative shape, and it's hopefully more straightforward than you might think. And I'm going to introduce you to some 3D printing. In Tinkercad, I save the file as an STL file, and then I will bring this into Cura and slice it ready for the 3D printer, and that produces a G code. And this is where the magic happens on my 3D printer. If you're interested to have a look, I'll put the link in the description below. Or how about search the internet and see if there's one available in your community that you're able to make use of. Of course, you don't need this piece of equipment to do your air dry clay, not at all, but it's just a nice addition and something a bit of fun for me to show you. And so that's the machine that's made these, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. Like in my other clay video, you don't need to use cookie cutters, you can cut them out as per this video. I love to sketch and doodle and do lots of designs for my pin badges, and I'll put the link for this below as well. I'm loving the flamingo the most, so I'm going to make some pin badges with this on. So again, I've created my SVG files in Illustrator, gone to Tinkercad and imported those in, saved the STL file, brought it into Cura and sliced it, ready to do this printing. I might consider selling these as part of my Etsy shop, or I might create another way to give these away, for example through Patreon. So how exciting! My flamingo has come to life, but unfortunately I've realised I have a really weak bit on the neck, and the neck did actually snap off, so I've changed my design a little, made it a bit smaller to make a smaller pin, and put it on a base. Please do comment below, I'd love to hear what you think of my different designs. When cutting the air dry clay out, when you have a cutter with indents, you just need to decide how thick you want that clay and how much of an indent you actually want. For example here, I've gone quite thin with the air dry clay, and so I have quite a faint line, and then in a bit I'm going to do a thicker piece and make the indent a little deeper. It's all about preference and you deciding what you like the most. With a cutter this small, it can sometimes be quite tricky to get the cutter back out of the clay, so I recommend not going all the way down to the surface so that you can release it again and get the cookie cutter out much easier. This takes a little bit extra cleaning up around the edge, but at least you don't have to press and make a dint with something like the end of your brush, which then takes a little bit more fixing. Like this here with the dint in the flamingo's head. Not always what you want. If you have a cutter like this, you can make them all uniform and make so many in one go. Once you've smoothed them out and you're happy with them, let your air dry clay sit and dry nice and slowly. White air dry clay goes from a light grey when it's wet to a bright white once it's dry. Take a piece of fine sandpaper or a fine emery board and smooth out any little imperfections and edges that need a little bit of smoothing. You can do this outside or wearing a mask. The air dry clay is then ready to paint, and I use acrylic paints for this. I have a new way that I like to varnish them after painting, so please stay tuned and see how I now do my air dry clay pins and how I varnish them. I love this stage of sitting, relaxing and painting the clay. It really is rather therapeutic. Again, my smooth tile is coming in very handy for this. And as I paint the backs, I use something like this tube just to prop them up. I have this lovely gold acrylic paint, so I'm putting a tiny bit on the edge of my brush and then dabbing it off, and I'm going to use the dry brush effect just to go over the top of some of this acrylic paint and bring out those details. But you paint yours and make them exactly as you wish. Hopefully you don't mind me introducing the 3D printer to you. I know I do lots of budget-friendly crafts on here, but I wanted to share this here with you, as it's sometimes nice to see some things that you've never seen in action before. I normally use paper-based air dry clay, but cutters work really well with polymer clay and the other types of air dry clay. So that the cutter can slide off this different clay a little easier, I'm using a little petroleum jelly around the cutter, and it comes off as easily as anything. So I'm going to carry on and make some more of my shapes, cut lots more out and paint them all up, ready to make into pins and pin badges and give them a lovely glossy top coat. I'm halfway through painting the pins, and I'm going to show you how I add the pin backs and make them lovely and secure. For a long time I never used any resin, but I thought I'd get myself some and give it a go, and I do now really like it. Just make sure you take all the health precautions and keep yourself safe in a well ventilated room and wear a mask. I have the UV resin, and this is fairly quick, so I put a dot on the back and I use this as my glue. Put the pin back in place, add a little bit more, and you can dome this by using a toothpick and pushing it out to the edges. And then I have a UV lamp that I use for my nails, and I can use this, or you can get some craft ones. And follow the instructions on your UV resin. I quite like using a 2-part epoxy resin as well. You just have to allow a little more time for this to dry. The reason for this project that I use the UV resin is I can go in with a paintbrush or a silicone brush and paint the edges of my clay, and then put this under the lamp, and then they start to dry straight away. But as we do these things, we all develop different ways and different techniques that we like to do things, so find your way and work that way. With resin, a silicone mat is really useful, and these brushes, don't use your best brushes. I am going to be able to wash these ones out, but use an old brush, a silicone brush or a toothpick. UV resin can also be left in the sunlight to cure. I find I do this as well anyway, and leave them in the sun until they stop being tacky. I find that the resin makes the air dry clay really strong and durable, and I do appreciate lots of you don't like using resin, so there are other options available. I'm going to finish painting these up and do some more designs on my 3D printer, and I think it's really quite amazing that I can bring this 3D printer into my home and make these fantastic creations. Let me know what you think, and if you do want to take a look, I'll put the link in the description below. Please also let me know if there are any other craft projects that you'd like to see me create, and if you'd like to see me do some more air dry clay, there will be lots more air dry clay videos as well. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate you staying to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.